Hello, my name is Phil Dubnick. You can learn more about me at my website, phildubnick.com. You can also hear me pretty regularly on the podcast Mixed Notes from Hell. This is the first in what will hopefully be a series of tutorials on audio editing and mix prep. And these tutorials will be in both Pro Tools and Logic, and I figured I would start with Logic. This specific tutorial is going to cover the topic of pocketing or tightening guitar and bass performances. And I want to show you a method that is efficient, that is not using flex audio, because stretching is really not ideal to use on any kind of live instrument. It just leaves too many artifacts. So without further ado, here we go. Okay, just a few things before we get to the heart of this tutorial. Number one, I mentioned flex audio earlier, and that it's not a great idea to use any kind of stretching algorithm to do any kind of corrective editing, including tightening or pocketing guitar and bass parts. The reason for this is that stretching is just too audible. It leaves too many artifacts, and those artifacts are sort of strange, and they adversely affect the audio itself in a way that's just not cool. And when you hire a professional mix engineer, if he does his job, you're going to hear a totally different level of detail in your record, like when it comes back to you. And what you don't want to hear in that level of detail is the stretching algorithm. You want to hear the performance, the arrangement, the songwriting. You want to hear the heart of the music, and you don't want to have it just be revealed that there's a lot of weird stretching artifacts there. It's just not good. There is a slicing mode of flex audio. I'm well aware of this. Unfortunately, the way it works, you just don't have the ability to fix any sort of, bad edit points that it imposes for you in doing its job. There's just not that many parameters to fix that sort of mistake. And it's inevitable that anything that is automated, I have just the general rule of anything that's automated is not automatic. You have to double check it. You have to be able to fix it. And if you can't fix it, then it's really not worth making into an automated process. You should just do it manually. But most things that you would do as an automated process, the general rule of thumb is, sort of trust but verify. In other words, like, let it do its thing, then go back through and double check what it did and fix anything that sounds a little bit weird. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's take a listen to the track that we have here. So as you can hear, this is just a really quick dumb riff I put together. The drums are hidden, and I can show them right here. For my purposes, I just wanted to save some screen real estate, so I hid the drums. But it's a good idea to actually have them showing, and maybe have the kick and snare close to the instruments that you're quantizing or pocketing to the drums, so you can have a visual representation as well as an audible one. But this is, since this track is pretty much to the grid anyhow, I'm just going to use the grid. And just a few things. These are just single takes. I cleaned up the opening. I usually sort of count off to myself by playing the muted strings. So I cleaned that up, but otherwise these are just single takes all the way through. This is going to differ from probably your use if you're watching this tutorial, because you are probably going to obviously make a compiler performance from several takes, usually is how you would do it. So the technique I'm about to show you, you're going to want to do this after you've already compiled the performance, and this is very key. After you've not only compiled the performance, but gone through and flattened that comp, and not merged it yet, but just flattened it, then gone through with a fine-tooth comb and made sure that every edit point, every crossfade, everything is as translucent as possible, that you don't really, I don't know if translucent's the right word, but that you're not hearing the edits, that you can just hear it as a whole performance, and for the most part, just a very cleanly edited whole performance. And once you have it to that point, what you're going to want to do is I would recommend personally, is to select all the regions in that flattened comp and then copy them to a new track, a separate track. And then that track, what I recommend doing is going up here to, I think it's file, yeah. And doing export track as audio file. I'm just going to show you the dialog here. There's nothing for me to export here for any reason, so I'm not going to actually do this, but I'm just going to show how you would do it. And you would do same bit depth, file type being the same would probably be best, although technically I don't know that it matters much for Logic. I would use Wave in general just because the timestamp. What was I going to say? You're going to want to bypass effect plugins, leave include pan and volume automation unchecked because you don't want those. And then you want to hit off on normalize. You don't want to normalize or protect from overs because you should be using good gain staging. So there's really no need to do that. So let me get out of this. All right, so I would do that, and that will bring you to where we are here right now. It's just that mine wasn't a comp. This is just a single performance. So same idea though. So let's get rolling with this. Okay, so first thing I do, I just double click that audio file. That opens up the audio file editor. And it also, this doubles as I guess the track window now. An audio file editor, if you're in Logic 9, I think it used to be called sample editor. Same thing. And I have the grid up here set to bars and beats. So that way I can really sort of see the detail of like how close or far I am off from the beat. So for instance, this will take a second to redraw. You can see that over here I'm a little bit late. Here I'm dead on. Here I'm a tiny bit early. A hair early, tiny bit late, so on and so forth. So that's why I put the grid on there. I also do this, to be honest, I'm not sure how much it actually helps. Snap edits to zero crossings is selected here, and I also have it selected up here as well. I'm a little torn on, or I actually don't have it, so let me do that real quick. I'm torn on it because it doesn't work the way that I had hoped it worked. In fact, I'm not even sure that it actually works. I won't get into it, but basically I put it on just in case it might help in the way that I do things here a little bit, but I'm not sold that it actually has at all. I won't get into it here. It's kind of a long, stupid story. Anyhow, let me get back to the window that I want. Make sure this is blue. All right, so now I'm going to go over here, now that I'm in the audio file editor, and I'm going to hit detect transients. Okay, so that's going to show a whole bunch of transients there. Now I have a couple ways to adjust this. If I don't see everything I want to see there, I can add hits right there or subtract hits. I'll just add for the sake of doing so right now. But I can also go through and hit each individual one of these and adjust them or erase them or add new ones. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that in a sort of quick manner. I'm zooming in super, super far, and you can see that I'm zoomed into the opening here, the very beginning. And I'm going to use, let's see if I can remember this. I believe it's, yep, okay. Option right button. We have option left and option right. And what that does when you're zoomed in at this level is it brings you to the next transient. For some reason, when you zoom out a bit, it does not actually follow the rules for some reason of what it's supposed to do very well. But when you're zoomed in this far, it does it perfectly. So I'm just going to go through here. I might zoom out a little bit just to get a better context. That's pretty good. Now, I'm looking for anything where I'm either missing a transient or maybe there's one where there shouldn't be. So for instance, right here, I'm going to show you how to do this without the eraser. You can use the eraser tool, but you can also just double click here to erase. That one should not have been, that was sort of a false positive, if you will. All right, so that one should not have been marked as a transient because it's just a sort of weird anomaly of the waveform. Anyways, let me get back to, let's go back to where we are. Let's zoom in. So that one is one where it is there, but it's in the wrong place. I'm going to move that back a little bit. Here's another one. It's there, but it is in the wrong place. I don't know why I'm getting Facebook notifications. I thought I turned that off. Anyhow. All right, so, and there's my phone. All right, it's amazing. All right, so I'm just moving everything around. I can go back to doing it this way. Just double checking to make sure everywhere that there is a transient marker that it is where it's supposed to be. And that I'm not missing any transient markers that should be there. So I'm going to do this kind of quickly. And again, I'm zoomed in pretty far. So like for instance, this one, not supposed to be there. So I want to zoom in close to get the D-level detail if I need to. But I also want to zoom out so I can see ones that are either missing. So there, I'm going to want to add in one. Or see ones that are just in the wrong place. Again, I apologize for that click and pop. We can thank the good people who make ScreenFlow for that. All right, so some of the redraw is really weird here. It's kind of slow. That should be there. This should be there. And again, I'm just going to zoom in. And you can see you can follow where you are up here, like if you get a little lost, if you're zoomed in really far. You can sort of see and track your progress that way. Okay, so another one missing right here. All right, so zooming out, I'm gonna just go ahead and run through it visually one more time. And it looks like all the transient markers are where they should be. Okay, now that I've done that, that is probably the toughest part, not a huge deal. Now I'm gonna exit this window. I can just double click that again and get there. Now I'm gonna right click here, and if this doesn't pop up, slice the transient markers, I'm not sure if they've added this to any of these other windows. I don't think they have. But if it doesn't pop up for you, what you might have to do is start a separate session. I'd recommend a separate session. Bring in a piece of audio that you don't care about, and just throw Flex View on. Put the track that the audio is on in a flex mode, doesn't matter which one. Right click it and click Split Transients. The reason I say to do that is because it will put it in this little recently used subfolder we have here. And I have, in preferences, the way I have this showing up is if I right click, all the tools will pop up with all the possible little menu items, not all of them, but most of them. And then along with the sort of most recently used menu items right here. So anyhow, I'm going to right click, I'm going to hit Slice of Transients. Now that's going to go all those transient markers that we just made sure we're in the right place. That's going to slice this piece of audio into regions like that. And I'm going to hit D. D is going to open up the event window. And the event window is basically just sort of like, I call it like an Excel sheet for all the audio and MIDI information in Logic, if that makes any sense. One thing you will recognize if you've used the MIDI in Logic, which I'm assuming if you're a Logic user you have, is the little quantize feature here. And if we use it in the event window, anything that we select will be quantized. So right now we have these regions all selected. So we're going to hit Q. And I've selected eighth notes, and I should note that the reason I've selected eighth notes is that, let me just undo that so we can here, so we'll undo both things. We'll just listen real quick. Is because I know that this performance, the smallest subdivision being used is eighth notes, and I'll show you what I mean here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 you get the point there. Anyhow, so I'm going to slice the transients again. And because I already know that the small subdivision being used is eighth notes, I'm just going to select all of this, and I'm going to hit Q, and it's already eighth. I've already selected eighth notes. I could choose a lot of things, but I'm going to choose eighth notes. I didn't actually even have to hit Q because I selected eighth notes and it already did it for me. So now you can see some of the slices have been moved over a little bit to conform to the quantization that I just applied. I'm going to close this window. And let me just solo it. I'll solo it and I'll turn off the amp modeling. So you're going to hear all the little gaps and everything. All right, so the reason I just did that first is what I want to do. That's strange. What I want to do first when I'm doing this is I want to just make sure that once I've quantized the audio, that it's not putting anything where it doesn't belong. Like everything is where it should be, and it looks as if and sounds as if that is the case here. So everything is where it should be. It's all quantized. However, there's some things that we're going to do before we do anything else here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use this little feature. We're going to hit Option Shift and the left arrow key. And what I'm doing, I've got all of the regions selected first of all. And what I'm doing is I just want to get it. I'm not going to do a lot of this. I'm just going to go back a little bit till there's just a tiny break in some between some of the regions, but there's just generally a break in pretty much all the regions there. Some of them bigger than others. There's a couple spots where there isn't one. And I'm going to go those to where there isn't a break. I'm going to do it to those a little bit just so I can get more of a break. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shorten the regions to where they end before any kind of transient, and they kind of get away. They get out of the way of some of the subsequent audio regions. I'm going to use this other shortcut here, Control Home. That is how I can go to the beginning of a selection. So if I go outside the screen here, so like right there, I'm going to do the Option Shift and back key basically. Now, so you can't see that, so I'm going to go Control End or Control Home will take me to the beginning or the end of a region. So here's another region where I want it's too close to the subsequent region. I'm going to pull back just the end. It doesn't nudge. It's nudging the end. It's not actually nudging the region itself. So again, now I'm out of view again. Oh, wait. Now what happened there? Did I just run out of... It's weird. I just ran out of regions. Okay. All right. So yeah, now there's a gap for everything there. Okay. So what I'm going to try first. Now, this is where the limitations, or not limitations, but Logic's workflow for audio is a little different from Pro Tools and others, and maybe not quite as developed in some ways. And that's okay because, there's plenty of MIDI developments in Logic that Pro Tools has yet to see. So that is fair is fair. All right, so what I have here is a shortcut. Let me show you the shortcut real quick that you have to look up, and it is not assigned to anything yet. You have to do this yourself. Trim region to start to previous region. I have assigned this to my F14 key on my numeric keyboard. Numeric meaning the bigger full keyboards, not the little mini keyboards that they have now. And if I hit F14, it's going to take the beginnings of each of these regions and move them backwards, right? And as you can see, now there's a little bit of what in Pro Tools and Beat Detector would be called the trigger pad. In other words, the regions aren't just up to the very edge of the transients. They go back a little bit of ways and give some breathing room there, so you can avoid a little bit of the potential overlap that might cause like a flam. And if we're looking over, it looks like it's pretty clean there. Right now, nothing is overlapping, even though I'm in overlap because of the way I just did that. So I can avoid having the regions overlap. It's a little bit problematic in Logic the way the overlapped files look unless you deselect them, which is a little bit of a pain. So I like to avoid overlapping until I need it. All right, so I'm going to just real quick try crossfading even with no overlaps. They're just all right up against each other. I'm going to do fade. Crossfade is going to be, this is an equal gain crossfade. sort of the standard, but it's best on guitars and bass and whatnot. Not so great on instruments like drums. So now I'm going to listen to the guitar, again, soloed with no amp. There's probably going to be some artifacts. Let's just hear how it is. Actually, we've had pretty good luck there, so there hasn't been really many artifacts. We can do one of two things. We can leave it as is, which I'm game to do. I don't have to have the regions overlap. If it's working and the crossfade seem to be working with that, I'm fine with it. But if we wanted to do, if we wanted to make sure that we had some overlap, maybe to see if it would make our crossfades and our edit points a little bit smoother, we can do that. I just select all of the regions except for the first one, and I can pull it back, and I would just pull it back really small amount. And actually, I gotta undo that because I want to go up here and switch out of beat. I should have done that earlier. And switch to samples. Now I'm just gonna go back just a hair, just to not change it too much. Now all the regions are actually overlapping, so the crossfades should be maybe a little bit smoother. I don't think they're necessarily going to be particularly. It usually makes more of a difference with equal power fades in my experience. Didn't seem to make a huge negative or positive difference. I don't know, I could go either way. I'm just gonna I'll leave it. Let's listen to it with an amp. Now I can't tell if that was sounds as if that's just an anomaly either from the room. I can hear a little bit of some weird sort of sound, or that might have actually been one of those clicks and pops. Yep, right there from the good people at ScreenFlow, who are on top of their software. Okay, so that one actually appears to be done. So this part of the tutorial on guitar is going to be pretty much over with. What you would want to do, you can either do one of two things. You could select all the adjacent regions that you've edited and made sure were clean. You could join if you're just selecting all on one track, or you could leave it and then do it later. Obviously, that's another option. Another option would just be, since this joining actually makes the most sense if it's from zero, like so this is from the beginning of the session. So joining makes sense then. You also have this option, which is probably the easiest, which is to actually just do export as track as audio file, just like we talked about before when you did your comp and you were going to flatten your comp. That does the same. It has the same effect as having done so in the way that I spoke about at the beginning of this tutorial, because you can always go back to edit anything that turns out you didn't get what you thought you did. If that's the case, then you can just go back and fix it. All right, so we're going to listen to it in context once. Okay, so with that, we're going to stop and we're going to move on to the bass. Okay, now that we've done the guitar, we're going to move on to the bass. Just a couple things are going to be different about this one. There's another click and pop. I have these tracks grouped. I'm going to take them out of group for a second here. They are the same piece of audio, though. And I should say before I do this that there are some weird complications that happen whenever you have like multi-track, multi-mic drums, or a bass DI and an actual audio of a bass amp that record at the same time with Logic. So you have to be kind of careful. This is not really the case, though, because this is just simply the exact same piece of audio. So some of the quirks, which I'll talk about in future tutorials, that you find shouldn't affect this at all, really. But we are going to group these first. Before we group them, I'm just going to take one of them and do detect transient on the one, because I'm going to use it as the main guide here. So I'm looking for, oops, wrong place. Detect transients. All right, so it's added those. We're going to go zoom super far in and then zoom super far or super big. And we're going to do that same little technique we used a second ago, if I can just remember it. I believe it's, oh, that's real big. Let me, it's a little bit too much. All right, so let me back up a little bit. There we go. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm doing option right. It would appear that I've got it, but if I'm not sure, I can check it here in a second. And actually, this is a good time to mention that I'm doing this to the grid, but you can actually create your own grid from the drum performance. So let's say that you have a drummer that does not like to play to a click, or your band just doesn't want to play to a click. You like the natural feel, you like the sort of ebb and flow of the human element of tempo fluctuations. Totally cool. But what you'd want to do, and this will still save you a lot of time to do to use this method that I'm showing you, what you want to do is you just make a beat map from the drum performance. So if the drum performance goes up and down in tempo, but you still want the band to be very, very tight with that drummer, yet you don't want the drummer to sound robotic, or you don't want it to sound like it's too canned sounding, you can use this technique by simply making a good beat map of the drummer's performance, and maybe I'll do a tutorial on how to do that. There might already be tutorials out there on beat mapping. Sorry about that. In Logic. But you can do that, and that way you can make the grid conform to the drummer instead of vice versa. And then once you have the grid, you can conform the other performances to that grid. But the grid is based off of human performance, so it's actually going to still be tight and very human sounding, if I haven't said that 1,000 times now. So anyways, this is really just the same file, so you'll notice there's no real change when I switch between those two. Which is why I wanted to say give you a little warning about there being some quirkiness about grouped tracks being edited in Logic. It will not be the case with this, but there can be sort of weird issues, and I think I'll do a drum episode of this, and I'll get into that. So I've selected group 2. I open group settings. I make sure I've got edit and phase locked chosen. And I'm going to, it's a little redundant because they're essentially the exact same file, but I'm selecting, it's this one that I want to use as my guide for where everything should be cut. But it's really the same exact file, so it really wouldn't matter. So I'm going to slice, and I'm going to double check just to make sure everything's sliced all at the same place. Because they're grouped and phase locked, everything that happens to one should happen to the other, and including all edits. Okay, so I've got all these. I do the same thing I did before. I hit D to open the event window. I know this is eighth notes. The pattern is still eighth notes, so I'm going to hit Q. And it's, as you can see, quantized. This is very similar to what happened before. Let me get out of this window. Okay, so now I'm going to just check it with it quantized like this. This is just the DI. Just double check that one right there. Obviously, that's pretty choppy, and you can hear the edit points, but it generally seems to be right. Anyhow, so now we're going to take care of the choppiness, just like we did with the other one. You can, by the way, You can, by the way, in groups, you can also select solo as an option. So if you solo one, they'll both solo. I just didn't do that. Anyhow, so now everything's quantized. We're going to select all, and we're going to do that same trick we used earlier where we took, zoom in a little bit. We did Option Shift left arrow. Just enough. We're just trying to see just a little daylight. That's all we're trying to see there between each region. Not a whole lot. And again, we're going to go through and just take the ones that there's less daylight there and just pull them back a hair. So I'm going to do the same thing. All right. So now I'm over here. I need to do Control Home. I might need to do that a couple more times. Again, I'm off screen now. Control Home. That goes to my selection. Control Home. Basically, just this, Option Shift, and then left or right just controls the end. And it's not stretching it or anything. It's basically just making the region bigger or smaller at the end of them. All right, so that's the end of these. So let's try that same technique. Now, this doesn't always work. This is a bit of a quick and dirty way of doing this. First thing we're going to do, actually, we don't even have to, we do have to select these. I've selected all of them. Now I'm going to hit F14 again, which if you remember from the previous one, that's, I think it's called Trim Start to the End of Previous Region, I believe is the shortcut. You can look it up and just listen and watch the previous tutorial and you'll hear all about it. It's a pretty cool little shortcut. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and throw crossfades across these and just see how it is to start with. I'm going to go with 44 again. I don't know why I like that number, but I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to just listen. Let's just listen to the DI for a second first. We'll listen with the amp. It's not bad, actually. There's a couple little spots that could be cleaned up, but it's not bad. So right there, I hear a spot right there in that edit. So what I would do there is I would just go, okay. Let's select right there. And maybe just select in between these. So even though I'm in overlap, because I've selected it this way, it maintains the no overlap thing. So tiny bit cleaner. You can also mess with the crossfade a little bit in that one. So right there is another one I hear. Yeah, that's sort of low. It's kind of subtle, but you can hear in that sort of low region. Still hearing it, so let me just try a little bit longer of a crossfade and see if that sort of masks it a little. Okay, let me get closer. Let's see. Actually, let me get further back here. And maybe now you can see that a little bit clearly. That's a bit better right there. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And what I can also do, you can nudge it in either direction. I might actually, instead of nudging it, I might actually just move it by hand instead of doing a shortcut. Or I might, let me just try first really quick, see if I can't just find a spot where, a sweet spot, that might be it right there. So hit Shift and play. That might do it right there, actually. I'm going to go ahead and up that a little bit. Okay, so far not bad. Let me just listen one more time through. It's not bad overall. those could be a little better. I'm a little nitpicky in general, but it's not a bad thing. All right. So. All right, so the only spot I'm still not totally psyched with is right here. You're gonna hear a train coming here. And honestly, it kind of doesn't bother me much. Let me see what I can do with that. In this instance, it might be that this is just a little bit too off here. And let me show you what you can do in cases like this. It is meeting at a zero crossing point, so you would think it would be better, but let's look at, see where things are. So if we align, let's say right here, if we move the one on the right over a little bit, oh, didn't mean to do that. If we move the one on the right over a tiny bit to where at least sort of matches this spot perfectly, then that might help us out a lot. That's usually what you want to do whenever you have an instance where the edit's not working. So that's almost an exact spot right there. I have to, let me just undo that for a second. Let me get, or actually let me just do this. And there we go. See if that's, let's see if that's any better. It has moved the other end of it over a little bit, but that's not bad. There we go, much cleaner. Okay, so. All right, so let's listen to it all the way down. Pretty solid, okay. And one thing is bothering me is a little sort of buzz here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit, not T, what is it? I think it's Command T? Yep, Command T. And I am going to hit Command, let's see if it's M. Nope, oh, didn't want to do that. Command M. Nope, that's not it. Oops. Let's make sure I didn't do anything. Split regions is okay, okay. So I just muted the tail end of this because it was just a lot of little buzz, like light buzz or something. And now I'm going to fade out on this very last one. Okay. So that cleans up the end. Let's just hear that. All right, I was being pretty darn picky. So now I can unmute those. Let's listen to the whole thing with all the instruments in. So overall, not a bad result. It's not particularly mind-blowing, obviously. It's totally, you know, the timing wasn't that off to begin with, but it doesn't matter. We're happy because it worked out pretty well. You can either export the tracks, or if you want, because these start from the beginning, you can just you can select all of them, right-click, and what you'll get is join per track is one of the options. If you don't see it there, you will see it bounce or join. But join per track is what you want. And yep. And you can see it just replaced those with contiguous audio files, and you can see that they're all pretty much on the grid now. And all this without using Flex Audio. All right, so hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial. It's my first, so my apologies for the unprofessional nature of some of it. But hopefully you got something out of it. Let's just listen to it on the way out here. Sounds good enough for me. All right, I will see you next time.